Hi, I'm Alison Miles-Jenkins and I'm Chief Executive of Training to Achieve. For the last 25 years, we've been helping people to accelerate their performance at work. Today, in this short video, we're going to be sharing with you just some of the top skills, tips and techniques that we help your people to develop on our in-house training course, Winning Ways with Customers. So we're going to be touching on some of the absolute must-dos for customer service, and we're also going to be covering what to do when customers are perhaps not exactly complaining, but let's say being difficult, and I'm sure we've all had experience of that kind of scenario too. So we're going to give you some fantastic strategies for customer service, even when your staff are under pressure. So take some notes because I'm sure there are going to be quite a few points that may well catch your eye. So first of all, let's look at some of the benefits of you providing first-class customer service to your customers and clients. And obviously there are lots and lots, and I've picked out perhaps some of those that are most important. Firstly, if you can get customer service right, it reduces, doesn't it, the cost of escalation. So if a customer isn't happy and maybe it escalates to a manager or even turns into a complaint, that's going to be very, very costly to your business, to your organisation. Also, it's a great enhancer for your reputation, and in fact it can really make your business stand out from the crowd, which is particularly important in any industry, but even more so if you're in a competitive environment. Obviously you want to give a great customer journey, and when you're giving great customer service, even if that journey has a few hiccups, it's going to be much, much easier to sort out if your customer has already experienced really good service from your staff. By providing excellent service, it also saves time. It promotes word of mouth, so you're actually getting free marketing because your customers are going to turn into advocates for your product or service. It can be a huge source of job satisfaction for your staff because giving great service in turn makes customers feel fantastic, which makes staff feel fantastic about themselves and their job too. Remember, behaviour breeds behaviour. So by providing fantastic service to the customer is much more likely to reciprocate. It's the customer's perception that counts. So at the end of the day, they're going to be the final arbiter, aren't they? The final judge in terms of whether they've had good customer service or not. And of course, it's all around meeting expectations. So there's a big kind of expectations management piece as well. But of course, the reality of face-to-face communication in many organisations, and I know this because I'm often a complaining, difficult customer myself when things go wrong, which seems to be quite often, is that as the customer, we're faced with poor listening. That's whether it's face-to-face or over the phone. We're not asked the right questions or the right type of questions, so we're not actually able to tell our story. The body language of the member of staff is often wrong and makes us feel perhaps that we're an interruption or a nuisance rather than someone to be welcome into your environment. The tone of voice over the phone says it all, and how often do we experience disinterested, unhelpful tones of voice at the other end of the phone? Rapport is so important to develop, and staff often have a real issue trying to get that rapport from the first few seconds of an interaction with a customer. And of course, if all this goes wrong, it's more than likely that things may escalate. Staff also make assumptions and judgments, and the whole thing can very easily get out of sync. So if all this goes wrong, then obviously that leads to a lack of clarity of need or the customer's perspective. That can develop into misunderstanding and actually escalate, can't it, into conflict. So we end up with a win-lose situation or a lose-lose situation. So the organisation misses out and so does the customer. There's obviously going to be considerable upset, tension if things go wrong. There are legacy issues, so obviously that customer will remember that bad experience and possibly pass that on to lots of other people that they subsequently interact with. Teamwork can be affected and the customer experience overall dented, sometimes irrevocably. Face-to-face, it's bad enough, but over the phone, it's even more difficult to get customer service right because let's face it, over the phone, this is basically all staff have. They're working in the dark. They don't have the physiology, they don't have the body language that they can use, and they're unable, obviously, to interpret that coming from the customer. So if your business is driven by customer service primarily over the phone, then you've got, obviously, an even taller order. So let's move on now to think about some of the tips. Service excellence, for a long time, it's been recognised that it's fundamentally 80% attitude and 20% skill. So that's quite good news, because 20% skill means that we can very easily develop staff skills, techniques, tips and so on. Obviously, the 80% attitude is the overriding factor, and really that comes back to the starting point in terms of your organisation knowing what to look for when they are actually recruiting and appointing customer service staff in the first place. So if you get the right person in post, then it becomes so much easier. If you've got someone who's kind of got the attitude that we often hear on our training courses, when people say, well, if it wasn't for the customer, if I could get on with my job, or, well, I didn't join this organisation to be nice to customers, or if it wasn't for the phone, I could get on with my work. If you've got those kind of attitudinal barriers, then it becomes obviously a bit more of an uphill battle. Now, in terms of thinking about customer service as a chain, it can only be as good, can't it, as the weakest link in that chain, and that weakest link occurs most often internally. So here we're talking about being mindful of the internal customer concept. It's not just about getting your staff to think about levels of service that they project externally to your fee-paying customer. It's very much recognising that everybody that they're providing a service to internally is also a customer, and not differentiating in terms of skills and attitudes. And also recognising that the customer is actually the lifeblood of the organisation. So it's, again, it makes me laugh in courses when people kind of say, I don't know why I'm here, I don't know why I'm on a customer service course. I don't have customers. Everybody has customers, and if you didn't have a customer, then why on earth are you employed? So that covers obviously external and the internal customer concept. So it's often about, on training programs, helping staff to make that shift in mindset. The customer isn't an irritant, an annoyance. It's actually, the customer is the lifeblood of the organisation. And moving on to thinking about service, then what we really do stress on our courses is that there are two sides to customer service. On the one side, there's the material side, as we call it, and that's kind of the nuts and bolts. That's actually the products and services that you and your business actually deliver. And of course, those have to be absolutely as good as you can possibly get them. That's the nuts and bolts. But then we've got the personal side of service. So that is actually obviously how those products and services are delivered by your staff, by your teams. And very often it's about trying to get those in balance. People always gravitate to their operational comfort zone, don't they? Which is really about almost a concentration or a focus on the products and services. But the how as well as the what is absolutely fundamental. And sometimes the personal side can actually make you stand out, particularly if your kind of organisation is very competitive with others providing very, very similar products and services. So it's that level of service, it's the how that can make you stand out and retain loyal customers who are going to become, as I said before, advocates of your product or service. So it's really, really important to think about that personal side. But of course it's down to the individual, and this is very much the message that we stress on our courses, how much responsibility each individual team member has to really creating that wow experience for your customers. Fundamentally, if we look at what we all want when we're customers, irrespective of the product or service that we are seeking, we all want to be made to feel special. We all think that we're important, and most of the time we also think we're right. So these are three fundamentals that customers need to bear in mind whenever they're interacting with their customers. And of course we also have to remember that customers bring baggage with them. So we encourage people to think about the customer, whether it's over the phone or face to face, to remember that these customers have kind of got a couple of suitcases on either side of them. And on a good day those suitcases are quite light, they don't have much stuff in them, but on a bad day they've got loads and loads of baggage. Often nothing to do with the product, the service, the team member or your organisation, but it's other life stuff. And helping staff to appreciate this then helps them understand, perhaps at times, why customers exhibit difficult behaviour. And if that's the case and staff don't actually appreciate that and they feel defensive and perhaps respond in kind, then we get this kind of defend and attack spiral, and things can spiral very, very quickly through to a difficult situation or a complaint. So kind of understanding all this psychology behind customer service really will help your customers feel calm, confident and in control, and it will help them understand which techniques they should apply in which type of situation. Empathy, of course, is important, just like we mentioned rapport earlier. Being able to temporarily then take your shoes off and stand in the shoes of the customer. So again, it's about trying to get into the mindset of the customer and understand their needs, their problems, their concerns. And if they are being difficult or complaining or unhappy, to try and work out where they're actually coming from. And if staff can do that, then they stand a much better chance, obviously, of maintaining that well service and diffusing the situation, solving the problem. What we do find, however, when we go in and we mystery shop or we listen to call recordings from a customer service perspective, we often find that, unfortunately, rather than do some of the stuff I've just been taking you through, staff use what we call red rags. And red rags are literally, it's like waving the red rag at the bull who will come charging. So these are accelerators, and they're often things that staff say and do quite unwittingly that can make what could potentially be a tricky situation far worse and actually destroy this kind of concept of wow service. Okay, so let's find out a little bit more about some examples of red rags. So here I've got 6 of them flagged up. Sarcasm, so that could be sarcastic terminology, or it could be the tone, face to face or over the phone, really, really likely to break rapport with the customer. Then using parental language, you ought to, you should have phoned us earlier, you really ought to have put this in writing, or you must. Language like that does not go down well with customers. And as I say, when we mystery shop, when we listen to call recordings, we hear lots and lots of examples of this. Repeating okay when it isn't. So the customer says how disappointed they've been with something, and the first word that comes out of the member of staff's mouth is okay. Why say okay when it isn't? It's actually asking for trouble, and you're more likely to get this escalation from the customer. Either inferring or saying overtly that the customer is wrong is rarely a helpful thing. Telling somebody to calm down is likely to make things much worse. But again, so many times we see examples of where, the member of staff says to the customer, if you could just calm down. And lack of verbal nods, those kind of I see, go on, helpful face-to-face and over the phone. Met with silence, the customer again is unlikely to feel like they're experiencing that really wow service. The worst thing, though, that staff can say is, I hear what you're saying, but in no way could we say a member of staff using this sort of phraseology is giving wow service to the customer. So these are some of the things that can obviously really dent the customer experience. Instead, let's look at some really great tips and some of the language that really has a powerful positive effect on the customer. Again, face-to-face or over the phone. Here, as you can see, personally, generally, definitely, immediately, really, absolutely, surely, certainly. These are what we call our LY words, and they're power words when it comes to communicating with customers. These can have a magical effect on the rapport and on the successful communication between team member and customer. And these also tend to work. A smile relaxes your vocal cords, makes you look and sound more approachable, more mellow, more interested in the customer. Collaborative language like let's, so in other words, let's see what we can do. Using their name but not overusing it. Saying statements like, what I can do for you is. Definitely, again, an example of one of the power words, that active listening, those verbal nods, using summarising, really useful technique, particularly for staff if they have to buy time, but it also shows fantastic level of listening. It allows the customer to check out that they've explained themselves as they thought they have. It's great for clarifying as well, so it really is a fantastic technique to summarise when you're dealing with your customer. Directional statements. So, for example, let's move on to. And that's kind of verbal signposting as well, as we call it. Compensate if you're on the phone by being in the dark. Tell people what you're doing. I'm just looking this up on the system now for you. The records that I'm looking at on my screen show blah. And again, another little ly word to remind you, surely. So those are things that tend to work. So we've given you just a few examples of some of the fantastic tips and techniques that we share on our Winning Ways with Customers course. And the next step that you can take now is to download our free e-guide, A to Z of customer service and complaints handling. Really, really useful checklist that you might like to circulate to your teams, to your team members. And if you really are passionate about developing customer service in your organisation, then call us now or send us an email and we'll come in and we will bespoke a totally unique Winning Ways with Customers program to meet your exact needs for your team. So we look forward to hearing from you. Bye for now.